Hello, music fans. You're watching Death by Unicorn, where we talk about metal, rock, and prog music. And this is New Music's Alive in 2025. I'm going to talk about 4 new albums that came out on April 18th, 2025. And I'm going to give my first impressions of them. I've listened to these just once or twice so far, so these are really just off-the-cuff thoughts, not full reviews. But I hope this turns you on to some new music that you didn't hear about before, or you let me know down below if I missed anything great that came out recently. So let's jump in with Teramaze and their album, The Harmony Machine. This is the 12th album by this Australian band. It's progressive metal, and I'm putting this one in my excellent tier. Definitely one you should listen to now if you love progressive metal music. And just this year, I finally finished listening to the entire back catalog of Teramaze. They're an excellent band with an excellent catalog. They're a very melodic progressive metal band. They occasionally have Christian themes in their lyrics, but they aren't too overt or blatant about it, so they haven't bothered me too much with their lyrics. Their vocal and instrumental performances here are amazing. This album includes all the tracks from the Desire, Colors, and Lust EP that came out earlier this year. And I love that EP, but they've added 4 more tracks to it and made it into this full-length album, The Harmony Machine. Now, all the tracks on this album are excellent, but I feel like I would have liked this album even more if they didn't drop the EP before the full album. The reason for that is I think the 4 best tracks on the album are all tracks that were already released on the EP. Sinister, Desire, Colors, and Lust, Perfect World, and Black Sound are my favorites right now. These are all amazing tracks, but it's kind of like they gave them away before the full album was out. And then the other 4 tracks on the album that weren't on the EP, they're still excellent songs, but none of them are as good for me as those 4 from the EP. So it's still an excellent album overall, possibly the best album of Teramaze's career, but I still want to kind of share how I feel about the EP coming out earlier with all the best stuff on the album. Got me excited that the album could be like near masterpiece tier for me, and it just didn't quite reach that height that it could have if like all the 4 additional tracks that were on this were as good as those best 4 from the EP, but it's still my excellent tier. Will certainly be in my top 100 albums at the end of the year, probably even possibly in the top 50. We'll have to see where this ends up at year-end list, but excellent album for now, The Harmony Machine by Teramaze. Next up, I want to talk about a band called Lux Terminus and their album Cinder. This is the 2nd album by this American band, and this is mostly instrumental progressive rock with jazz fusion, gent, and metal influences. And this one I'm going to put in my very good tier. Definitely one to listen to if you're interested in instrumental music. I never heard the debut album by Lux Terminus before, but before this full release, I did listen to a couple singles from this album, Mosaic Mind and Plonk, or Plonk. The compositions are intricate and interesting. The playing is great. Both of these tracks are instrumental. Looks like the core 3 members of this trio, they don't sing at all. The band is Matthew Kirshner on drums, Brian Kraft on bass. They don't have a guitarist in the band, which is a bit unusual, of course. The keyboards here are provided by Vikram Shankar, who I recall hearing on albums by the band Redemption. He's just an amazing keyboard player. He's also a touring member of the amazing band Pain of Salvation. And since I'm more into music with vocals, I didn't expect this album from Lux Terminus to be high up on my year-end list overall, but I do expect that it could place highly on my list of favorite instrumental albums. However, they've got some guest vocalists on 4 of the 10 tracks, so that kind of puts it in this weird in-between state where it's mostly instrumental, not really sure what it wants to be. They've got Ross Jennings as a guest on one track. I originally saw that he was playing guitar on that track, and I thought maybe he wouldn't sing and he was just going to do guitar when I looked at I think it was the credits on Prog Archives that said that. but he does actually do vocals. Maybe he also does guitar on it, I'm not sure. He does a great job on vocals, as you would expect. And they've got a great guest sax and flute on the same track with Ross Jennings from Jorgen Munkeby, playing the sax and flute, I believe, and then guest vocals and keyboards on that same track from John Pyers. So they have 3 guests on that one track, and that's probably my favorite track on the album. It's called Catalyst. The first 3 tracks on the album have guest vocals from Aspera. So check this band out if you like instrumental bands that are like bass and keyboard heavy. Bands like Nuclear Power Trio, where they're really bass heavy. The Omnific, which is really bass heavy. Arch Echo, very keyboard heavy. And Earthside is another great one. It reminds me of kind of a mix of those bands. And yeah, very good album. Nothing that's going to be on my year-end list due to the minimal vocals, but quite likely to feature in my top 10 instrumental albums of the year, even though it'll have that asterisk of not being fully instrumental. That's Lux Terminus and their album Cinder. Next up, I want to talk about Hawkwind and their album There's No Space for Us. This is the 37th album by this band from the UK, so they've put out a lot of music. And it's psychedelic, progressive space rock with hard rock influences. This one I'm just going to put in my good tier. So the first album I talked about, Teramaze, was excellent tier. Lux Terminus is very good. This one from Hawkwind I'm just putting in my good tier. I didn't expect this to be amazing at this stage in their career. They are a great band, so I expected this would at least be good, or maybe I'd be pleasantly surprised. And it was pretty much exactly what I expected. A good album, nothing too impressive that I expect to return too much. Pretty similar in quality to their last 2 albums, maybe even a tad better. The music on here from Hawkwind is pretty jammy. It focuses more on a vibe than on any interesting composition. A lot of it seems like it could have been written by just the band jamming over a simple riff and then improvising and seeing where it goes. So if you like jammy, spacey, vibey stuff, you'll probably like this, so do check it out. I'm personally more into like more thought out compositions and arrangements over jams, vibes, and improvisations, but I definitely respect both approaches to music, and I can hear that this band has great talent. That's Hawkwind and their album There's No Space for Us. And last one that I'm going to talk about in this video is by the band Melvins and their album Thunderball. Another band who's put out a lot of albums. This is their 28th album. They're from the US, and this is experimental sludge metal with alternative metal, grunge, stoner rock, psychedelic influences in there. I'm also putting this in my good tier. And I thought their last album was good as well. Nothing mind-blowing. But for some reason, I find myself still interested to hear what they'll do next, even though I've never quite heard anything from them that really clicked with me that I want to keep going back to over and over again. They're kind of just this interesting, quirky band. The first single I heard from this one, King of Rome, was good, but again, nothing special. My expectations weren't very high, but I nevertheless find the sound of this band kind of intriguing. They're kind of like Queens of the Stone Age meets Baroness and Mastodon meets like weird and funny stuff like Mr. Bungle meets Deftones meets Nirvana and Foo Fighters. If you put all those bands in a blender, what do you get? But then it never quite rises to the heights of those bands. It never quite gets as good as I think they could with that sound and their talent. But the second single I heard from this album, Victory of the Pyramids, was a 9.5-minute song. Rather than just a 3-minute song like the first single, and this one was a lot weirder, a lot trippier, more psychedelic and experimental. And I found it a lot more interesting. And I think this second single here is more indicative of the sound of the album with its weird, trippy, psychedelic sludge metal vibes. The whole album continues this vibe, but it's similar in quality to their last album, Tarantula Heart. So again, just good, but not very good. Likely not one I'll return to much. But do check it out if you're a fan of theirs and you want to hear that blend of sounds there that I described. Don't expect to be mind blown, but expect, solid, well-made music here from Melvins and their album Thunderball. And that's it for my first impressions of these 4 new albums that came out on April 18th. What did you think of these albums? Let me know down in the comments. And did anything else come out that you think I should listen to as well? Definitely let me know. And if you like metal, rock, and prog music, you're in the right place. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button so you can stay in the loop on new music as it comes out and as I give my first impressions on it. In about a week's time, I'll be talking about my first impressions of these many new albums that are coming out April 25th, 2025. We're going to have new music from Ghost, Kardashev, Cosmic Cathedral, Eluvati, Caliban, Patos, Machine Head, Oak, and Panzerballet. Oh, I forget how to say their name. German band. So that's some of the stuff that I'm going to be listening to in about a week's time. That's a lot of albums right there. That's like 9 albums. So if you want to hear what I have to say about those, hit that subscribe button so you know when I post my next video. And peace out.